Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to be doing a brief stock analysis on Boeing, and I'm just going to be giving a few insights on Boeing that I think are going to be really useful, but I'm actually not going to be covering some of the problems with their top management and really going into their financials. So if that's exactly what you're looking for, you may not be able to find that here. But with that being said, let's get right into it. This is Boeing just year to date. Towards the beginning of the year, in February, they were at their highest point of the year at $325, and then all the way down to their lowest point, they went down to $89, so taking a bigger hit even than most of the airlines. But here's what's a little bit more troubling to me. If we look at the 5-year chart here, we can see that just in the last couple of years, they were at $446, and then they were on a downward trend even before the last couple of months when all of the stocks really took a big hit. Then just looking at their revenue and earnings year over year for the last 4 years, we see earnings and revenue relatively steady from 2016 to 2018, but then we see a sharp decrease in revenue in 2019 as well as a decrease in earnings, and actually negative earnings just slightly. And also even more troubling here, we see negative earnings for 3 of the last 4 quarters, which is really terrible for Boeing and really the worst we've seen in the last decade. Even with all of those negative things about earnings for Boeing recently, here's why I think there's no chance of Boeing going bankrupt. All of these major airlines use the Boeing aircraft, even with Southwest specifically only using Boeing, and just about all of the major airlines in the US use Boeing. So if Boeing were to suddenly go bankrupt and not get acquired or anything like that, all of these major airlines in the US would not be able to get more aircraft, and the US government would not be able to allow this, and then Airbus would also have a monopoly on the entire industry. And next up we have a guest speaker, Mr. George, an aeronautical engineer, who's going to describe some of the mechanical issues going on with Boeing.
Thanks, Mr. Prestridge. It's a pleasure to be here. Without getting too technical, I just wanted to highlight a few problems Boeing has been having over the past year besides the COVID-19 pandemic that once they are overcome will allow the company to grow in the future. The first being the 737 MAX 8 aircraft, which incorporated the new MCAS system to combat the nose-up pitching moment created by the improved CFM International LEAP 1B engine. These aircraft are still continued to be grounded today. Boeing is continuing to work on a fix for the software, but once the issues are handled, the future of Boeing's next-gen aircraft looks promising. The second big problem would be the engine shortage that Boeing is currently combating. Once Boeing's next generation of aircraft hit the market, the large amount of orders caused a turbofan engine shortage in the supplier. This engine shortage did not cause any decrease in production in 2019, but Boeing recently struck a deal with the venture companies GE and Safran, which make the CFM engines for their next generation aircraft, which makes their future look promising.
Thank you so much, Mr. George. I think the viewers are going to get some really useful insights out of that. Next up, I wanted to take a look at a few bullish and bearish points by an analyst at Morningstar, which will hopefully give some better insight onto why Boeing is struggling or why I think they have a pretty good chance of recovering really well. The first one is that Boeing has a large backlog that covers several years of production, so Boeing's marketing team is basically doing nothing right now. Even if Boeing were to get a new order, the order wouldn't be able to go into production for 3 or 4 years. So I think a lot of people heard in January that Boeing didn't get a single new order for a plane, but Boeing really isn't trying to get new orders. They're really just trying to get through the production orders that they currently have. And then the second point is also a really good one, and it's kind of 2 points that I want to talk about. The first one is that Boeing, and this isn't specific to Boeing, Airbus is really good, or we're going to be able to capitalize on this as well, but Boeing is well positioned to benefit from emerging market growth. So countries all over the world that are going to be starting new airlines because they're new and developing economies are going to be able to finally buy planes and want to establish their airlines that have never been able to before. And Boeing and Airbus are going to be able to capitalize on that for many years to come. And then the second point about this is that growth in revenue passenger kilometers and a robust developed market replacement cycle over the next 2 decades. So as airlines need to replace planes that they bought originally in the 80s and 90s, Boeing is in a great position to kind of redo the production on those planes and replace all of those older planes. And then I also wanted to talk about a few more bearish points. The first one is really that they're having a lot of problems with the 737 MAX, as we kind of already touched on. But as soon as they can get out of that debacle and really fix their production moving forward, that's not going to be a long-term issue. And then the second bearish point, I also am not sure if I necessarily agree with. It says it could take years for airlines to recover from the recent economic carnage, and although specific airlines may be in major trouble, and Boeing is in some trouble as well with debt, I don't think it's going to take years for Boeing to recover, or Airbus. I think it may just take 3 or 4 quarters at most. And finally, for the final bearish point, aircraft development is notoriously susceptible to development delays and cost overruns. And honestly, you could say that about just about any industry, but with an aircraft, you could be talking about a delay of a few months. So I'm sure clients are not very happy when there's that big of a delay, but which makes it stick out a little bit more for the airline industry. But Boeing has been able to manage these pitfalls relatively well, along with Airbus, but Boeing's probably done a little bit better of a job than Airbus. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. As you can tell, I'm a little bit more bullish than bearish on this stock, and I've recently done several videos on a lot of the different airlines, so come check that out and subscribe for more content.